Mirë se erdhët në Public Square. Unë jam Ditmir Bushati. 20 vjet nga samiti i Thessalonikut, ku Bashkimi Evropian konfirmoi vullnetin politik për antarësimin e shteteve të Europës juglindore në BE, vetëm Kroacia ka arritur të jetë pjesë e saj. Që prej fillimit këtij viti, Kroacia është pjesë e Schengenit dhe zonës euro, duke shënuar një model zhvillimi e transformimi për gjithë rajonin, por nga ana tjetër, duke thelluar diferencën me të gjithë ne. Për diskutuar rreth transformimit përmes antarësimit në Bashkimin Evropian, e ftuara ime e sotshme është një mikesh, Vesna Pusic. Vesna ka shërbyer si zëvendëskryeministre e parë dhe ministre për punët e jashtme dhe çështjet europiane të Kroacisë gjatë viteve 2011-2016. Ajo është zgjedhur deputete në Parlamentin Kroat për 6 legjislatura. Vesna ka drejtuar Komitetin Kombëtar të Monitorimit negociatave për antarësimin në BE të Kroacisë gjatë viteve 2007-2011. Ajo është themeluese dhe ka qenë kryetare për 11 vjet e Partisë Liberal-Demokrate të Kroacisë dhe zëvendës presidente e grupimit të Partive Europiane Liberale të njohura ndryshe ALDE gjatë periudhës 2007-2013. Aktualisht, Vesna është presidente e Forumit për Politikë të Jashtme të Kroacisë. Dear Vesna, welcome to Public Square.
Thank you for inviting me.
20 years from the Thessaloniki summit, which confirmed the European perspective of the entire region, only Croatia managed to join European Union. And from the beginning of this year, Croatia joined the Eurozone and also Schengen area. What does it mean for Croatia and for the region?
It means a lot for Croatia, but not enough for the region. In the years since Thessaloniki, so much has changed that I guess if somebody went to sleep at that day and woke up today, she or he wouldn't recognize the world in many ways, and certainly wouldn't recognize the issues that we see as most important today. For Croatia, at that time, we thought actually that it took us a long time. It took us 12 years between ratifying stabilization and association agreement, which is sort of the first step, and becoming member of the European Union. But from today's perspective, it doesn't look like such a long time in comparison with our neighbors and countries of the region. It meant a lot. I mean, as we all know who live in this part of Europe, for us, European Union is not just joining a club. It's actually building, state building. It's building institutions. It's building a political culture. So Croatia today certainly has institutions that we didn't have, let's say, at the time of Thessaloniki, or certainly didn't have before we joined. We are very, very far from perfect, but we are way, way better than we would have been if all of these things have not happened. But the region has gone through different European soul searching, if you want. If everybody can remember, there was this fatigue, then there was reflection, then there was disagreement on when and how and conditions, and changing the strategy and changing the accession process, which was all, I think, different ways of saying we are not sure from the European part. We are not sure about these countries. They are small, but there is a number of them. And if you think of all their leaders sitting at the European Council and having the veto power, we are really not sure we want that. However, I would say that Russia has changed all of that. The war in Ukraine has been going on since 2014, but in a way, most of the world, and certainly most of Europe, or almost all of Europe, apart from the Baltic states and Poland, decided to ignore that to a large extent. But the invasion of almost exactly a year ago, in February 24th of 2022, the invasion, full-scale invasion, Russian invasion of Ukraine, changed the whole of, I would say, the emphasis or the whole concept of what enlargement or joining of the Western Balkan states to the European Union, what that means. And I would say that now it's a key issue in European security.
Before moving to that very important and very actual topic, what's your feeling when you are traveling to the region? I'm giving you mine. When I visit, and I have visited Croatia a lot in the past, I see this stark difference between Croatia and the rest of the region in terms of infrastructure, in terms of international capital flowing in the country. You see it also in the advertisements. And there is a different work ethic compared to the rest of the region. With this attitude of European Union, are we somehow attesting the main thesis of Samuel Huntington, according to which Europe is ending somewhere in Croatia?
Well, Huntington has failed definitely in our region, since, as we know, Europe is also behind you, not only in front of you if you're looking towards Europe. European Union is also Greece, European Union is Bulgaria and Romania. So as far as our region, as we all know, we are very skeptical about Huntington, although there are some people who adhere to his theories. But in our region, it doesn't really work. It can't work because it has gone further than the region. And this is one of the reasons why it has grown from being a problem or an issue of the countries of the region that, based on the old world that we knew, that was there in 2004, and when the first East Europeans joined, and to some extent even we were certainly at the very tail end of that world when Croatia joined in 2013. That world is gone. The world in which the countries of Southeast Europe or Western Balkans join because somehow they deserve it, and there is an unquestionable support in societies of their countries joined. That world is gone, and those circumstances don't exist anymore, because there is still majority support in all of the countries except Serbia, where they're in the low 30s, which is an issue in itself. And I think points to a need to change the entire European strategy towards the region. But now this is, if you look at what Russia is doing in Ukraine and countries in its immediate neighborhood, like Georgia, like Moldova, there they might have some territorial aspirations, let's say. In this region, they don't have territorial aspirations. Their presence here is exclusively to destabilize Europe and destabilize the Euro-Atlantic relations. So this region has become a European issue. It has become a thing of Europe either sort of dissolving on the international stage as a player, or Europe actually stepping up to the role that's expected of it. And this is to become a geopolitical player, which means that you can at least first consolidate your own territory. And these countries of the Western Balkans, Albania included, are countries that are surrounded by European territory. They're now a white spot in the middle of European territory. And for security, transport, every other reason you can think of, they need to be integrated into the European Union. Now the question is, and I think that might be what you're sort of the direction you're heading into, how? how has this changed? How has the change of circumstances changed the approach that's needed? I think Croatia, which, as I said, is very, very far from perfect, but it has really improved. I mean, I have to say it has really improved in this new surroundings.
When you refer to the need for the change of strategy of European Union in dealing with the Western Balkans or with Southeast Europe, what do you have specifically in mind? There has been this global strategy where of European Union, where Western Balkans is specifically mentioned in relation to the security challenges. Now there is this war going on in the continent, and the whole landscape of the security environment has changed dramatically. We are witnessing Ukraine and Moldova being candidate countries, and Georgia aspiring to become EU candidate. Don't you think that also the image of Europe's border, of EU's finality has changed with this war in the continent, and this is a chance somehow, or a good moment also for Western Balkans that needs to be seized?
I agree with you. I mean, there is this big tragedy, which is the Russian attack and aggression against Ukraine, has in a way opened a new era or a small window of opportunity, which needs to be seized, absolutely, for the Western Balkans, in the sense that I think it's very difficult to imagine that Europe would expand into Ukraine or further east if it doesn't consolidate its own territory in the Western Balkans. Now, the question is how. I would say that two things need to change in the strategy. The conventional approach to the Western Balkans was Serbia needs to lead the process, because Serbia is the biggest country and, unfortunately, potentially also the biggest disruptor in other countries. So once Serbia is in, everybody else will follow and everything else is going to be easy. And the other thing that needs to change is the notion that European Union needs to communicate primarily, if not only, and sometimes really only, to the leaders of the Western Balkan countries. In case of Serbia and everybody else, I understand where this logic comes from, and I support the idea that it's very important for Serbia to join. But unfortunately, primarily because of the media campaign over the years in Serbia, it cannot be the leader anymore. It cannot lead the process. Serbia needs to be surrounded by success. It needs to see other countries moving forward. Albania, Montenegro, Macedonia or North Macedonia, Kosovo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, moving forward. That is something that motivates politicians, especially the leaders in Serbia, when they see that the neighbors are moving forward. Because at the moment, Serbia, as I said, which is a very serious problem, has very low support for its membership among its citizens, for its membership in the European Union. It's 33-34%, something like that. So I think this approach needs to change. Serbia is not going to lead the region into the European Union, but I think it would follow. The other thing that needs to change is this leaders versus societies. I think that European Union needs to, it was so used to really talking only to the leaders. And that's why in some countries the support dropped, because in a number of these countries, the leaders are not so keen, regardless of what they're saying. I think to some extent because they're also looking at former Croatian Prime Minister, who was really very instrumental in helping Croatia enter the European Union. That was his positive side. Unfortunately, he was also very corrupt. And he has spent the last 10 years since Croatia entered the European Union mostly in jail. And I think that is something that a number of leaders in the region are looking at and thinking, is that the best strategy for me, not for my country? So this is why I think the European Union, and it has a lot of instruments of addressing societies, because without this push from below, this process doesn't work. And for instance, some of these things were signed in the course of the Berlin process in November last year, forming a regional common market, a number of other things, roaming. These things, there are many of the different things of that kind. The only thing you need with this common market is an approximation, at least, of the year when that common market, regional common market, is going to join the European common market. You need this roaming, you need free travel, you need to give societies what you can give them of the Western Balkans, what you can give them before membership, in order for people to start feeling part of this joint political entity that, in my opinion, is absolutely, the only place we all belong to.
You mentioned the case of Croatia with the former prime minister and the whole transformation process that you have gone through. So don't you think that the European Union or European Commission in involving other layers of society or the so-called agents of change in the society should have at the epicenter of its strategy rule of law related reforms coupled with economic development?
Yes, but these are the hardest. I mean, the rule of law is, as they say, the mother of all chapters. This is the most important, and in many ways, it has the greatest consequences for everyday life. And everybody who has ever been to any kind of court to settle anything, including, register the ownership of agricultural land or anything, not even big things. Those are the most difficult changes. They're also difficult because we are all small societies. We are not tens of millions of people. We are, and in that sense, within the elite, people are intertwined, know each other. So our problem is that these changes, A, go slowly, and B, these changes tend to backslide. Croatia has probably had the best functioning judiciary in the spring of 2013, right before we joined. There was backsliding, absolutely, but definitely not to the point to where we were before. So we are not as good as we were in 2013, but we are certainly better than we were, let's say, in 2001 when we started that process, or even 2005 when we started negotiations.
You mentioned a little bit before the need for change of approach, especially in relation to Serbia, and the way how I've read the strategy of EU and US towards Serbia was somehow centered around three main elements containing Russia and China, their influence in the region through Serbia, normalizing relations with Kosovo, and protecting the territorial integrity of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It seems that in all these three fronts, EU and US did not get what they were investing for. So what needs to be done in this respect?
One thing that I think needs to be done is in order to motivate Serbia to move is not only try to combine this pressure and flattery of the Serbian President Vucic, but to show progress in countries in the region that can make progress. If I know anything about Vucic, I know that he's competitive. He actually looks at other countries and other leaders and tries to see whether they're in some ways better than him. And if that is demonstrated, that actually, people who are reforming, following the rules, are making progress, and their countries are making progress, I think this is something that would additionally motivate him. As far as these specific two countries are concerned, Bosnia-Herzegovina and Kosovo, I would add Montenegro here, because I think that in spite of everything we hear, Montenegro is probably the weakest link and the most sensitive, security-wise, the most sensitive spot in the region. Bosnia-Herzegovina, in spite of all the uproar about the changes that the High Representative, so the EU representative or international representative in Bosnia-Herzegovina, has introduced on the evening of the last elections, I think that this has created a small but important opening, because from the start, in Bosnia-Herzegovina, the federation, so the part in which you have Bosniaks and Croats, was always meant as a nucleus of the future state. And the Republika Srpska, where you have practically nobody else because it has been ethnically cleansed, but Bosnian Serbs, has been designed as a sort of homage to the past, so to speak, or a solution which is temporary, and it was introduced in order to stop the war. However, for years, the federation wasn't working because they kept blocking everybody kept blocking everybody else in the decision making. Now, there are, I'm sure, a lot of reasons why people were angry and frustrated by the changes, but one thing that was, I think, a positive thing was that it has potential to de-block the decision-making in the federation. And if the federation can show that it works, then this is, I think, a proof that Bosnia-Herzegovina can work. As far as Kosovo is concerned, the plan that has appeared has, I think, many very positive elements. One thing that is contested and is sort of controversial is this association of Serbian municipalities. Now, in my opinion, there is absolutely no reason for this association of Serbian municipalities to resemble, as it does today, to resemble the Republika Srpska, which is proven to be disruptive, not only for Bosnia-Herzegovina, for the entire region. It can resemble the Croatian example. Croatia has a joint council of municipalities in Eastern Slavonia. That is a sort of registered NGO where representatives from municipalities with majority Serb population are working together, consulting. They are financed from the budget, but they're not an autonomous administrative region. So they don't affect the architecture of the state. Croatia has been, as I said, with all its shortcomings, it has been a success as far as integration is concerned. Bosnia-Herzegovina definitely has not been a success. So copy something that actually works. Copy the Croatian model of joint council of municipalities,
Can Croatia play a stronger role in the region? Because you have the reputation of a country that transformed itself during the EU accession path, and you have many commonalities with all of us. And I remember also our joint initiatives in the Adriatic, where we were working and discussing about projects of infrastructure, of energy. So can we have something more bold from Croatia? Can we expect something more bold?
Croatia should definitely be more involved in the region and can be more involved in the region because of its, let's say, sometimes inconsistent or controversial policies, maybe not with all the countries, because there is not enough trust, and trust is an important element here. But there are things in Croatia that even without Croatia's presence can be used: documents, organizational models, solutions to different problems, because we have very similar problems, all of us in the region. As I always said, we entered the European Union, but we didn't move. We are right here where we always were. So yeah, there are a lot of similarities. In some countries, for instance, in particular, I think Albania, Croatia could also have a very, because there are no contested issues, very proactive and positive roles. There is a lot of space to work in the region, especially since, as you said, there are similarities, and Croatia could help, and through that help its own and European security.
What is the last book you have read, or the book you are reading that you'd like to share with us?
One is called The Diary of an Occupation by a Ukrainian author. And the other is the biography of Susan Sontag, who has also spent a lot of time in our region, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, it was a pleasure.